to Bhagavad Monday night Bhagavad Gita class and Kirtan, and we're very happy that you have taken the time to join us, and hope you like to join in with our Kirtan.
Jaya Vishnu Paramahansa Bhagavad Shishima Jagat Guru Siddhaswarupanam Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnu Paramahansa Bhagavad Shishima His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Guru Vaishnava Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur's World Mission Ki Jai. Navadi Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopina Shamakam Radhakun Giri Govardhani Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Radha, Gaura Prema.
Yep, it's not working. Okay, not to work.
Oma Gina Timarandasya Gina Gina Salakaya Chaksurun Militanyena Tajmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Statpitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajayivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Suta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanan Bhavenbhyo Vaishnavbhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktarindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Siddhaswarupananda Paramahansa Niti Namine Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahansa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate. So before speaking, first I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Jagatguru Siddhasarupananda Srila Prabhupada, whose very dear Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada is Gora Karuna Swarupaya, the mercy manifestation Lord Chaitanya, and very dear to Radha and Krishna, Radha Krishna Prastayate. And offer my respects unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are like wish-fulfilling trees, able to fulfill all the desires of the falling living entities, and full of compassion upon them. Haribol. Namaste, everyone. So, let me know if you can't hear me. Okay, it says loud and clear. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'll just grab a drink. So we're continuing with Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. And the first real section of chapter 2, where Krishna describes the living entity as being eternal, being spiritual, although he doesn't actually use the word spiritual, but he describes how it is imperishable, avyayam, eternal, nitya, sanatana, eternally the same, purana, primeval. So many different words that Krishna uses, and maybe next week, just when we finish up on this section, I might just summarize all the different words that Krishna used to describe the soul, the Dehi, the inhabitor of the Dehi, the body. And Krishna describes how the body is asat, false, not lasting, whereas the soul is sat, eternal, always the same, ever existing. So in text 29, Krishna says, Ascharyavat pashyati kashidainam, Ascharyavat vadati tataiva kanyaha, Ascharyavat chaina manya shrinoti, Shrudva pena veda na chaiva kashit. Some look on the soul as amazing. Some describe him as amazing. And some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Some look on the soul as amazing. Some describe him as amazing. And some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So in this verse, Krishna is basically explaining difficulty of understanding the soul. And, in doing so, Krishna is sympathizing with, to some extent, with Arjuna's plight. So it's like, here is, Arjuna's on a battlefield, involved in a big family dispute or a dynastic struggle, dispute, and he's there with all these different bodily relatives, and this whole saga of the conflict between the Kurus, headed by Duryodhana, and the Pandavas, headed by Maharaj Yudhisthira. So this whole thing has been going on for, decades. Ever since these guys were kids, there was always a conflict and a struggle between Duryodhana and Bhima in particular. But all the Pandavas became involved. And then what to speak of the gambling match in the Great Hall, when the Kurus attempted to strip Draupadi naked, and then in a final act, the Pandavas were banished to the forest for 12 years, then had to live incognito for 1 year, and then on returning, they then, expected to receive their kingdom back, but Duryodhana had no interest in giving the kingdom back, saying, I'm not going to give you as much land as can be pierced with the eye of a needle, which in other words, nothing. So, this is kind of like a very kind of, it's not a material situation, because of course in this instance it's all part of Krishna's pastime, and so it's and these people are all, the Pandavas, they're all Krishna's eternal associates and devotees. But from a external point of view, if you look at this, it's like it's a big family struggle. So normally when people get into a family conflict or a family struggle, you tend to think of things from a materialistic, bodily identity point of view. Like, these are my cousin brothers, and I'm really pissed at them, and they're demons, and there's my grandfather, and somehow or other he's on the other side, and I'm going to have to kill him, and killing people is bad, and then he's being a king, or a prince, he has the duty of taking care of people. The Pandavas are ideal administrators, taking care of the inhabitants of their realm, and so very much concerned with though of course concerned with the spiritual well-being, but also very much concerned with the material well-being of all the people under their care. So anyway, so it's a very sort of, he's in a very practical kind of situation with great material responsibilities, family responsibilities, and so on and so forth. And then he's here on the battlefield, like the whole thing has come to a head, right? It's come to the climax. Here it is, they're on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Arjuna's suddenly sort of talking about how he doesn't want to fight. And then Krishna has then been chastising him. And then now Krishna is basically coming at it from a completely spiritual point of view and telling him that, no one, the soul can't kill anyone, and the soul can never be killed. And the body is not nahanyate hanyamani sari re. The body is not the soul doesn't die when the body dies. So you can kind of visualize perhaps Arjuna kind of like scratching his head, while he's trying to figure out how how to apply what Krishna's teaching here on a practical level in Arjuna's situation. And so, anyway, so we can kind of, relate here, that Krishna then basically says, that, well, some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, they cannot understand him at all. So I mean, trying to understand the soul is like, wow. It's like with our material eyes comprised of earth and water, as we look out, all we see is material energy. We see people's material bodies, we see material things, material houses, material cars. Everything we see is material. And now, Krishna is like suddenly talking about the soul, and essentially all these wonderful qualities and characteristics that the soul has. And it's like, well, with our eyes, we can't see the soul. With our material eyes, we can't see the souls and the soul. And so, of course, this is like an ongoing discussion. Right? The modern scientists, because you can't see the soul, then they don't accept the soul. So then in one's education, there is no discussion about the distinction between matter and life, about the spirit, soul, or the Atma. There's no discussion whatsoever. I mean, you can go through 13 years of schooling, from kindergarten through to year 12, and then you can go from there. You can go to university, and you can do a degree in science, in biology, study of life, and biosystems, and you can then do a master's degree in biology, and you can even do a PhD in biology, and the study of life. And throughout that entire academic career, you may never hear of the soul, nothing about the soul. There is no soul from the materialistic science point of view. And the reason is because you can't see the soul with the eyes, with the material eyes. The soul can't be seen. So the presence of the soul can be detected, and consciousness is the symptom of the soul, or the very nature of the soul. The soul being, the symptom of the soul being conscious, and the soul being life force or consciousness itself. And then when the soul leaves the body, of course, then the body's no longer conscious, and it just lies there. In fact, it begins to break down. While the soul is present, the body hangs together, goes through its different transformations. All the different bodily functions are working, processes. And then as soon as the soul leaves, it all stops. Everything stops. The body starts to break down. It's like, so this is very sort of clear evidence that someone has left, and everybody knows intuitively that everybody has left. Somebody has left, sorry. But it can't be proven scientifically according to the standard of the material scientists, because if they can't see it, or they can't detect it through some kind of material test, then they don't accept it. So they don't accept the existence of the soul. So even if they hear about the soul, they can't understand him, and they reject the presence or the existence of the soul. So, Srila Baladev Vijayabhusana actually makes an interesting point in his commentary. And he says that the word Ascharya-vad, which Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has translated as amazing or as similarly amazing. Srila Baladev Vijayabhusana makes the point that, and this is kind of a grammatical point, I don't really understand grammar too good, but he says that the word Ascharya-vad can modify the subject or the object. And if you're not too good at grammar, he spells it out here for us. He says, the person sees the jiva as an astonishing object. So in other words, a person may actually have eyes of knowledge, jnana chaksusa, Krishna describes in, I think in either chapter 13 or 14 or 15. He describes, that one sees with jnana chaksusa, eyes of knowledge. So either the person sees the jiva as an astonishing object, as amazing, or the person sees the jiva and is amazed. So similarly, someone speaks of the jiva as astonishing or amazing, or they speak about the jiva with astonishment or just amazement. So they can either, be describing that the jiva is astonishing, or they can just be speaking about it and be astonished themselves, like just be astonished about the soul. And they can hear about the jiva as astonishing, or hear about the jiva with astonishment. So we can hear someone describing how the jiva is astonishing, or we can be hearing about the jiva and just be completely astonished. And then even having heard about the Atma, a person who is not pure in heart, kaschid, does not understand about it. So we have to have a pure heart to be able to understand the soul. And Baladev talks about that. Baladev Vijayabhusana talks about that a little bit more, which we'll come back to. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he in describing sort of the unspoken dialogue, he says, Arjuna is speaking, what an astonishing thing you are describing. And it is so astonishing that though I am being enlightened by you, my lack of discernment does not go away. So it's like Arjuna is saying, what an astonishing thing you are describing. Like Krishna is describing the soul and the characteristics of the soul. And it's just astonishing. And I remember when, and perhaps some of you or all of you can remember, when you first perhaps come in contact with the teachings of Krishna's teachings and Bhagavad Gita. I remember the first kind of little booklet I ever got was Srila Prabhupada's little booklet called Who Am I? And in time over the years, Prabhupada with Tusta's assistance and the assistance of many others expanded this little "Who Am I" booklet into the book "Who Are You?" And but anyway, so I read the little booklet "Who Am I?" It's describing that we're not the body, right? That we're spiritual in essence, that we're a spiritual being, spirit soul. And there's, in the little booklet, there's various quotes from Bhagavad Gita, other literatures, the Bible perhaps. And, so when I first read this, it's like, well, I had no idea. It's just like, well, it's just, as Srila Vishwanath is describing here, it's astonishing. I grew up, my mother was a Christian. She was a follower of or a member of the Church of England. Here in America, it's called the Episcopalians. And, they sent me to a school. My parents sent me to a religious school, a school called Bharata College, which was actually a very good school. And we had to go to chapel. So it's religious school, and you had to go to chapel at least once a week. And I also had what's called divinity classes. And these weren't comparative religion type classes. They were just classes on what the Church of England taught. And when I grew a bit older, maybe I was 14, I went through a process that's known as confirmation, and to get which means getting confirmed into the teachings of the Church of England. And so I also used to go to Sunday school as a kid. My mother used to make us go. Didn't like it much. But anyway, she made us go, or made me go. I think after I complained enough, I got to get out of it. But anyway, so went through this process of confirmation, had to go to quite a few different classes, even had to go on a weekend retreat, because I was more interested in the girls that went on the retreat than I was actually in what was going on at the retreat. But anyway, I had to go to this retreat, and there were nice nice people who ran it and organized it. And so anyway, I went through all this different religious education into the teachings of the Church of England, and perhaps in the Philippines, for the viewers from there, you may not be aware really what the Church of England is. Well, it was really the Catholic Church, and then Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife. He's married to Catherine of Aragon, and she hadn't produced him a son, or she had produced some sons, but they died. And so he was kind of bummed about this, and he fell in love with one of her ladies in waiting, Anne Boleyn, or fell in lust rather, and so he wanted to get rid of his wife, but the Catholic Church wouldn't let you get divorced. So he started his own church, the Church of England. And it was basically all the same teachings, all the same Catholic teachings. Everything was the same, pretty much. Other than that, he could be the head of it, and he got divorced. So, over time, of course, some of the teachings got changed, and they were influenced by the Reformation that took place in Europe in the 17th or 16th and 17th centuries. But anyway, this is where the Church of England came from. That's what the Church of England's teachings basically are. They're pretty much just the teachings of the Catholic Church, a little bit changed around. And So anyway, I went through all this religious education as I was growing up, and I had no idea what the soul was. No idea. You just have this confused idea that, at death you get buried, and then at resurrection day you come out of the ground, right? Or it's like, life on earth is, it's a one-shot deal. Only humans have souls, and you're born, and then depending on how you live your life, either whether you surrender to Jesus or not, you either go to hell for eternity, where Prabhupada of course talks about this and kind of makes fun of it regularly, but either you get thrown into the hellfire and you just suffer for eternity, eternal hell and damnation. That's how they say it, right? Or you go to heaven. And it was like when my mother passed away, maybe 2004 or 2005, I think it was. We went to the funeral and in Sydney, and my mother wasn't that religious. She was a little bit, but she was somewhat religious. And the minister's speaking, giving his sermon, and he talks about how she's gone to heaven. And I'm thinking, well, she wasn't that religious. It's not like she was a pure devotee, right? I mean, she liked the teachings of the church and so on, but she wasn't really that religious. And I'm wondering, well, why is he saying this? And the real reason why they have to say that is because if you don't say that, that means they went to hell. It's like there is no middle ground in their philosophy. Like in the Catholic teachings, there's a concept of purgatory, where you can sort of go into some middle dimension, and I'm not quite sure what happens in there or how long you stay in there. I'd have to study up on it. But in Church of England teaching, a Reformation type religious philosophy, there is no middle ground. There's you take birth as a human, and only humans have souls. And at the end of your life, regardless of where you were born, what your situation was, which country or which religious faith you're a member of, or whether you knew anything about religion or not, whether you had any opportunities to hear about God or to hear about Jesus, either you surrendered to Jesus and therefore you go to heaven, or if you didn't, then you went to hell. You're damned to hell for all eternity. So, it's kind of mind-boggling, really, to think about this. But anyway, so that's how I'm taught, right? So you have this kind of confused idea, they speak about spirit, but you don't really have any idea what they're really talking about. Like, what are you talking about? And who is it who goes to hell, or who is it who goes to heaven? There's just sort of this vague idea about a soul. And, and then what is this idea about resurrection day? When Jesus comes back and everyone gets resurrected, well, the resurrection of the dead. Well, it's like, well, what does that mean? And how does that fit in with the idea of going to heaven? So anyway, so the whole thing was very confusing, even though I studied it quite a bit. And of course, there was the ministers teaching it were quite intelligent. But they weren't able to convey what these teachings are really about. And so anyway, so then, when you read, or I read, Who Am I? And read Bhagavad Gita, I mean, I couldn't understand it. I had no idea, but sort of you kind of get this idea, and of course Prabhupada has made it very simple. This is a wonderful contribution to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition that Srila Prabhupada has introduced his teachings of the science of identity. That I'm spiritual in essence. I'm the dominated part and parcel of the Supreme. I'm not the Supreme Soul. I'm just a separated part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. I'm dominated by material, by natural and social forces, and that my function as an eternal spirit soul, who's the dominated part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, that my function is to render loving service to the Supreme, to Krishna, to God. So this is like, Prabhupada describes this so simply and brilliantly, and it's never actually it's never been taught like that before. Of course, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, as we're reading here, is teaching us that we're not the soul, and we're not the body, and and then teaches throughout the Bhagavad Gita that essentially we're the dominated part and parcel, that we're not Krishna himself, and that our function is to love him. But it's never presented in such a simple way, that the way Prabhupada presents it in the science of identity. And so this is a very unique and special contribution that our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada has given to the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage tradition, and is giving to the people of the world. But anyway, even hearing about this science of identity, it's like people can't understand it. I just kind of can't understand it. But also it's quite amazing. It's quite astonishing. Right? So as Krishna says here, some look on the soul as amazing, some describing as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Through my upbringing, it's like you're hearing about the soul, but you don't understand him at all, because the speakers are not able to convey the teachings of the soul and who the soul is to you. And then when I came across Srila Prabhupada's teachings in the form of his Who Am I booklet, and was given a Bhagavad Gita as it is, like the full edition, the Macmillan edition. It's like, well, so even though you hear of him, of the soul, as being amazing, still I couldn't understand him. And so even today, so many decades later, it's still like understanding who the soul is, and the connection between the soul and the subtle body and the gross physical body, and how it just all works. It's just like, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. But still don't really understand it. So what to speak of someone in Arjuna's condition, who's sort of hearing this, and it's like, wow, wow, Krishna, what are you talking about? Here I am in a battlefield, going to have to engage in killing a whole bunch of people. And here you're talking to me about the soul. And it's like, wow, this is like really, really difficult to understand. And so for most people who are so absorbed in their material situations and so convinced that they are their bodies, that when they hear these teachings, so even though they hear them, and even though they hear these amazing teachings, they just don't understand it. So they hear about it and go, oh, that's an interesting idea. But they don't actually understand the full ramifications of these teachings. I mean, the full ramifications of what Krishna is teaching here is amazing. Right? So, you consider you are eternal. Right? Your nature as spiritual, as a spiritual being, an Atma, is that you are eternal. Now you and I, or I can just speak for myself, and most people, we spend our whole life as though this life is everything. I got my allotted time of 80 years or 75 years or whatever it is, and I spend my whole time thinking about what I am doing with these years. When I'm young, I'm just kind of a bumbling idiot, and I spend like, what am I doing right now? And as I get a bit older, I start to get an education. I start to plan, well, what am I going to do in the future? So I'm sort of building towards my future. Getting educated and getting a career, and starting a family. So, but all these things that I'm doing, my career, my family, they just don't last very long. Right? My career, by the time I've gotten educated, and then I graduate with all the different degrees or whatever that I need, I'm already like mid-20s, and then I got maybe 40 years to do my career before it's time to retire. Or I have my family, but I get married, but I'm only going to be married, if I don't get divorced beforehand, 50 years, maybe 55. I read about someone the other day and they were married for 74 years. I was like, wow, 74 years, man. They've been married 74 years. They were both like 100 or something, and they got COVID, and they had to be in a hospital. They let them recuperate in hospital together because they'd been married for 74 years and were just always together. So they made this big exception to the rules, and but the point I'm making is that no, you are eternal. You are eternal. So which means not 50 years. Like that can feel like eternity. Like actually when there's a bit of a joke, when you get behind a car at a traffic light, and the light's red, and then it turns green. Right? Well, sometimes people kind of define eternity as being the amount of time that it takes between the light changes from red to green and the car in front of you starts to move. Right? Because you get like really impatient, like, what is this guy doing? He's not moving. And you start honking your horn and getting all uptight. Yeah, what are you doing? Get going. You get get all upset. And so like this is like, it feels like an eternity. That's actually what you say. It's like, oh man, he's there forever. Say like, oh, he's always doing this, or he's forever doing that, you know, or it took him forever to clean up his room. Like, yeah, like, you know, when you bring up your kids and they try and get them to pick up after themselves, and it's like they take forever to do it, right? Because they just don't want to do it, and so they stuff around and avoid it. And so we kind of use these words forever and eternity in this very sort of lightweight way, you know, and we don't actually apply them to their real meaning and the real situation of the fact that we are eternal. And so this tiny little amount of time we spend within this body is just a blip. You know, it's just a blip. And in the context of eternal time, of what eternity means, you know, but we put everything into it. Everything goes into this life. And of course, it's not to say that this life is not important and that it doesn't deserve careful consideration of how we spend our time. Our time is very valuable in the human form of life, and particularly in our situation where we are the disciples and students of a bona fide spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. You know, we should be using our time very carefully in the service of his mission of trying to assist other people to receive and hear these teachings, these amazing teachings, so that they can be amazed by them and hopefully understand them, that they won't be in the category of people who, even though they hear these teachings, they just don't understand them. Hopefully we can pass on the message of our spiritual master in such a way that people can understand it. And then they can look at their own situation and go, well, gee, what am I doing with my life? You know, I'm acting as though this time in this body is the end-all, be-all, and the only thing that matters. And instead of like realizing, no, I'm eternal spiritual soul, spirit soul, and that you know, the purpose of life is to actually become self-realized, to realize my identity as spirit soul, that I'm the dominated part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, and that my function is to engage in the loving service and engage in a loving relationship or bhakti with the Supreme Person. You know, this is the goal of life, or the sajja, the goal of life, the purpose of my sadhana, my practice of devotional service to achieve the sajja, or the goal of pure love for Krishna, or prayojana, the goal of life. You know, so, you know, we should always keep this in mind, you know, as we're thinking that our life and the little situations we get ourselves into are always thinking they're like the end-all, be-all, the only thing that matters. The most important thing is what's happening to me right now, and how unfair it is, or how mean you're being to me, or how you're not nice to me, or how I want to go and eat my dinner, or whatever it is. You know, we're always thinking about ourselves and our material situations and thinking of them as being the most important thing. It's like, you know, Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita here, he's absorbed in his own situation. You know, at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, he's just completely absorbed in his own situation, and what a bad situation it is, and how he doesn't want to be in this situation and how he wants to get out of it. So he's just thinking of himself. And this is, in reality, our situation. We're just absorbed in our own little lives and what we're doing and what we want to do or what we don't want to do, or how it's so unfair, or how our situation's unfair, or, whatever it may be. We're just thinking like this. And through the process of studying Bhagavad Gita and essentially experiencing what Arjuna got to experience as he heard Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Krishna enlightened Arjuna. So Arjuna went from being someone who's self-absorbed in his situation at the present and what's he going to do and how he doesn't want to do it, to Krishna then takes him through Bhagavad Gita so that at the end Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. It says, Nashto Maha Smriti Labda. So now I remember, my memory has returned. My confusion is scattered. Nashta. It's all scattered. And now I'm, ready and prepared to fight. In other words, he's achieved self-realization. He's understood that he's spiritual in essence, that this temporary material situations aren't the end-all, be-all, that he's not the supreme, and that his function is to render loving service to Krishna. Krishna's told him, just surrender unto me. And Arjuna is surrendering to Krishna. And so this is the situation we should be in. We can follow in the footsteps of Arjuna, follow in the footsteps of the great saints and sages, and in the footsteps of our spiritual master. And we should not feel that, oh, no, I can't be like that. Yes, we can. This is what our spiritual master's desire for us is that we all become pure lovers of Krishna, that we succeed in our spiritual life and go home back to Godhead, as Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to put it. So thank you very much for listening. Greatly appreciate it. Tomorrow night I have a soul wisdom, a soul journey class, yoga wisdom, soul journey, a journey of self-discovery at 7 p.m. Hawaii time at Yoga Kirtan, Hawaii. So, please join us for that if you'd like. And so we'll have a little bit more Kirtan now. And so actually next week's verse 30 is kind of like the end of this whole section where Krishna is describing the soul. And then after that, Krishna then actually stops talking about that and goes back and basically directly rebuts Arjuna's arguments for not fighting. Okay, so Haribol, thank you.
Haribol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. hope you had a nice evening and all the best for the coming week. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol.